Good morning. It is Tuesday, February 14th. We're here for our regular scheduled commissioner meeting. We have two commissioners in the room, Commissioner Peck and myself. Commissioner Mullen is remote. We have our administrator and the clerk of the board. And at this time, I'll call the meeting to order and ask everyone to please rise and join me in the Pledge of Allegiance.
For which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
So I'd like to make an announcement as chairman. I have added a new line above public comment, and that would be elected department head courthouse comment. So I know we've been having the sheriff come to the mic quite a bit. Under public comment, we can't engage in conversations, so by adding this, we will be able to engage in conversation with any department head or elected that comes to the mic.
Mr. Chairman, if I might ask a question about that.
Commissioner Peck, go ahead.
Did I hear you correctly in saying it's elected official public comment or just comment?
Elected official department head comment.
Comment. And it is intended as a two-way dialogue?
Yes, because we cannot dialogue with them in the public comment, and we're having so much activity to the mic. I think it's best that we are able to engage in a conversation with them.
I think that's a fine idea. Thank you for doing that.
All right. So with that, we will move down to Potts and Associates. Are they on the speakerphone?
Yes, sir. I'm
Alrighty.
here. Did you miss the Pledge of Allegiance?
Excuse me?
Or did we miss the Pledge of Allegiance?
Yes, you did. We said it.
Okay, just checking. Thank you. Well, it's always a pleasure to talk with you guys. I really appreciate the time. I'll start here with saying we are in the cutoff week. We are coming down to Friday is the last day for bills to be considered in their policy committee of origin. So technically, if a bill hasn't been executed or exec out of policy committee by Friday, the bill is technically dead. Now, the caveat to that is, of course, if the bill is deemed necessary to implement the budget for any myriad of reasons, they can bring it back to life all the way up to when the gavel falls on the very last day. So that's important to note, but what it'll do is it'll parse down what we really focus on here starting next week. That said, there were a couple, I put a couple of bills, interesting ones in the update this week. We were actually kind of blindsided by these, and I can tell you no one caught these, and they're kind of interesting and concerning, especially for rural areas. Specifically, they're talking about pedestrian crossing. We were reminded by Representative Chapman here. He said, I'm surprised nobody is paying attention to these, so we all started paying attention to them. What they are is 5383. It's called Concerning Pedestrian Crossing and Moving Along Roadways. What this bill does, number one, is it removes any penalty for jaywalking. So jaywalking will no longer be an offense here in Washington State. It also removes the requirement for a pedestrian walking along a road, even a highway, to walk facing oncoming traffic. The assumption is they wouldn't walk down the middle of the road, but they could walk on the right side as opposed to on the left side legally. The second bill is 1674. It's improving protections for pedestrians and other vulnerable roadways. Long story short, what this does is it increases penalties for pickups and specific SUVs when they strike a pedestrian. The other one that I'm going to loop in this bundle of three here that isn't part of those two, what it is they are trying to get rid of your right turn on red within a proximity of certain facilities. That's 1582. So you can't turn right on red within 1,000 feet of, schools and certain facilities. Where all these bills come from, there was a traffic study based on, what they were looking at was pedestrian impacts with vehicles. They found that more pedestrians are hit by pickups and SUVs than are cars, and they found that more pedestrians are hit within a certain distance from a specific institution, schools, public buildings, things like that. So they're trying to address these things. The thing that I thought that your constituents might be very interested in is specifically the increase in penalties for pickups. These three bills put together are kind of, they don't really make sense, and so we don't know what's going to happen with all of them. I mean, at the same time, we're letting pedestrians go across the road anywhere that they want, but we're increasing fines for pickups hitting people. One of the arguments on these bills is it's already illegal to run people over. After you run somebody over, another $100 fine on pickups. This really reads like maybe they're trying to punish people with pickups and SUVs, despite the vehicular manslaughter charges that could be brought against you for running somebody over. So these three bills are concerning just in general. There's logistical considerations that don't make sense. How are you going to train your population when and where you can or can't turn right on red? We've got, millions of people in Washington State who turn right on red pretty much wherever you have a red light. There's signage, I guess you could do. So there's cost considerations, and there's no fiscal note on what it's going to cost to do that. So wanted to bring those to your attention. We're paying attention to them. We're letting the sponsors know that we have concerns. Beyond that, we'll see if they come together and decide they want to address that. More pertinent, and I think, your sheriffs are going to be definitely interested in this, and commissioners, your elected officials. There's a bill, it's House Bill 1445, and basically what this bill is it's the response to the Sheriff's Association coming out against the governor's firearms bills. And what this bill does, House Bill 1445, it is intended to bring penalties against sheriffs or elected officials who refuse to enforce a state law that they feel may be in violation of the U.S. Constitution, for example. So it invokes the Department of Justice at the federal level and actually would bring scrutiny down onto your local sheriff or potentially the commissioners or something like that if you decide that a state law is unconstitutional and you don't want to enforce it. There's obviously a lot of concerns around this bill from the local level, not the least of which is, supplanting and superseding local control. But the big concern, too, is this bill would basically charge you for these investigations. Like the county itself would, or the city itself would have to pay for the investigations. So it's additional cost. It's a scary bill, bringing in the feds to try and make us do something. It is in appropriations. There is a scheduled hearing on the 16th, which is Thursday, at 4 p.m. in the House Committee on Appropriations. So they did exec it out of the Civil Rights and Judiciary Committee along party lines. So if you guys want to comment on that, I definitely recommend that you speak up if your sheriffs have any comments on that bill specifically. It's going to be something that you might want to talk about. The other one that I've received a little bit of concern and comment about is Senate Bill 5627. This one talks about concerning the salaries for county commissioners and council members. Basically, it talks about if you're going to increase your salary, you have to bring together a commission. This one is a single sponsor. It's Senator Hunt. What the concern with this one is, at the local level, down at the county level, we have enough people, or enough trouble trying to get our citizens and people to sit on like an equalization board or something like that. Number one, in a lot of the counties, finding enough people to sit on these boards is difficult. And then number two, it's an additional cost, because you have to pay people to sit on the board, and it may not be in your budget. There are no appropriations in this bill to accommodate for that. In fact, it says there is no fiscal note available on this one. So that's something that if Commissioner Peck, if you're coming over and wanted to talk with Senator Hunt, we might set that up. We have a couple other commissioners looking for a meeting with Senator Hunt on that one as well. We don't have any feedback on the time of that meeting or if he is actually available, but if it is, I will let you know. The other one that we've been working on kind of off and on for probably 25 years in the legislature. This is Senate Bill 5303. This one specifically is talking about the Public Works Assistance Revolving Account. They're talking about creating it again because they took it apart. It's been there in the past. They're talking about putting this thing back in. To make this an account that the legislature couldn't steal, couldn't rob the money out of, it would have to be a constitutional amendment. We've tried to run that bill several times over the past 10 years, really haven't got anywhere with it. The thing with this account, as I'm sure you guys know, is it's a revolving account, very low interest that the counties can use for small public works. So the account does grow. This is a very useful tool for us at the local level to be able to get projects done and fund it with an account that we have. The problem we have is that the legislature sees money in there and they keep taking it. And so that's what we're trying to address here. The legislators do realize that there is a need for this account. That said, and they actually mention in the Senate bill report that there would be a required constitutional amendment to make this a basically a perpetual fund that couldn't be robbed. They'd have to leave the money into it. Eventually, that is obviously the goal. We would love to do that. The political environment right now doesn't seem to have the interest and hasn't for the past probably 10 years on this. Commissioner Hutzel is extremely well versed in this. He sat on the Public Works Board. If you have any questions, I can answer a lot, but Commissioner Hutzel out of Lincoln County is probably the best commissioner in the state to answer any questions right now. And, you know, he's been a great asset on this as well. So we will see if this one, if we can move it along a little bit, definitely good for counties. I would say at that point, we have got, let's see, the riparian borders bill, which was 1215, was a governor asked bill. It was mandatory in riparian orders around streams, rivers, things like that. There was a coalition came together, both sides of the aisle, both houses, the tribes, agriculture, counties. They reworked the bill. It is in way better shape now. They actually had to drop a completely new bill, not a substitute. The governor pulled his support from it because the bill is voluntary now. However, all of the stakeholders that are affected by the bill came together and negotiated this bill specifically because what it came down to is with salmon recovery work and all these other things that have been going on specifically that address and deal with these riparian areas. There's been a lot of money in there and a lot of research that's been done. And we need to be able on the local level to put the money where we've done the research and we know where these riparian areas are. And actually it worked out really well in the conversations and these negotiations. The tribes were really pleased with the work that the counties have been doing. And it seems as though there's been a disconnect in communication from the work you've been doing at your county level to the state level, whether it be the agencies or the associations or the tribes in that effect. The tribes specifically were really excited about the work that's been going on under VSP and salmon recovery and everything like that upstream. So we've come to a good agreement on this one. It's House Bill 1720 is the new bill, and it is a bipartisan. There are Republicans and Democrats across the board on this thing. So everybody likes it. This one's going to move. It's going to be better, I think, than the mandatory bill. With that, I think I've kind of highlighted the big ones for you guys. Are there any questions that you guys have for me? Anything that I can answer for you here today?
Commissioners, questions?
Zach, this is Commissioner Peck. No questions. I'll be in Olympia Wednesday, Thursday of this week, chairing the Legislative Steering Committee for the State Association of Counties. I've not seen you at those in the past. I don't know if the local rules would allow that, but perhaps we can see if that's possible if you're over in Olympia. I think it'd be good for your ability to give updates to the board. So look forward to seeing you if you're over there.
Oh, yes, sir. I've actually been there. I hide in the back.
Okay,
They
well,
don't. They don't give me a seat at the table.
you're hiding well.
Yeah, I was hiding. Well, actually, last time I was right behind Commissioner Blankenship from Adams County, and the camera turned on him, and I got scared. I had to hide behind him.
Okay, well, I know where you were then. Thanks.
Commissioner Mullen, you got
Yes, sir.
any comments or questions?
No questions at this time. Thank you.
So I only have one. I met with a constituent yesterday out in Franklin County, and he told me about House Bill 1333 that had a hearing yesterday. Okay, what can you tell us about 1333, which is the
That one was called Establishing the Domestic Violence Extremism Commission.
yep,
Without going too far in it, this one, from a legal standpoint, has some issues. It's been challenged on the state level and federal level across the country in different locations. This would kind of fall under red flag laws, things like that. They have it's in appropriations. They have not execed it. I don't know if this one's going to move, but this is one of those where if it does move, there are legal challenges literally written out and ready to be submitted.
okay.
So
And Mr.
that's the status of the bill, and it's being pushed. So yes, there are definite concerns about this bill.
And our administrator has a question?
Good morning, this is Dwayne. Hey, I had a question regarding what you were just talking about with that legislation that would prevent raids on the Capital Works budget, the Public Works budget. That would be very much, I totally agree that that is much needed legislation because every budget cycle, the legislature raids from that fund and cripples it. And we really benefit Eastern Washington, public little water districts and stuff with the low interest loans that come out of that. It's my understanding that we could not put something for a constitutional amendment that would achieve that same status. That cannot be done by initiative. Is that correct?
It is correct. It cannot be done by initiative unless, of course, the initiative is to amend the Constitution. But
So-
still, to amend the Constitution, you still have to have the legislature do that.
Yeah, that legislation is going to be very difficult to do because they really count on that shift every year. And then just one additional comment on the same theme about public financing for public works type projects. Senate Bill 5509 concerns me a great deal. That establishes a state bank. In my opinion, that's just more socialism. But it's very concerning to me. They've been attempting this for years. They, in the past, even had language that would suggest that part of the startup capital could be state pension funds, which would be disastrous. I looked in that bill yesterday and seen that provision has at least been taken out of this one, and it appears that it's just a bond issuance type bank, but the executive, I looked at the fiscal note, it adds 18 positions to the state treasurer's office with a budget in the millions of dollars. I'm really surprised it's in executive session, but maybe can you tell me if you think that might make the cutoff? You can send me an email about that. I'd like to come over personally and as a former treasurer and testify against that because it's just bad legislation.
Yeah, and just a quick comment on that one. They schedule it for executive session twice, and neither time they've been able to get it out of committee.
And there isn't a
So there's a
companion.
lot of talk about it. I don't think it's going to move. However, on this bill, because it's in the fiscal committee, this Friday is not the cutoff for that. It's next Friday. So they do have another week and a half. I'll do a little poking around, and I'll get in touch with you and see, if somebody thinks they're going to move it or change it or what we think we're going to do with it.
I'm glad to see there's not a companion bill in the House. So that's good.
Yeah, it agreed.
Thank you.
All righty, well, thank you very much for your report.
All right. Thank you, gentlemen. It's been a pleasure, and we'll see you here tomorrow or the next day, Brad. Appreciate it.
And that moves us down to the approval of the vouchers. I believe we only have one today.
Move for approval of fund expenditures in a total amount of $3,006,081.15 as presented. Note that has been reviewed and signed by the county administrator and the auditor's office.
Second.
Second.
Commissioner Mullen, I will second because I'm in-house and I can sign the second on the voucher.
All right, thank you.
All in favor, say aye.
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 Next, we'll move down to the consent agenda. I believe there are 7 items on the consent agenda.
Move for approval of the consent agenda as presented, 7 items.
I second. Any comment? Hearing none, all in favor, say aye.
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 Mr. Chairman, before we move on, if I could just make a note, it wasn't intended as discussion for the consent, but I wanted to acknowledge the county administrator's efforts to create this courthouse expansion fund 325. And I think that's a good move, and it's something that candidly I've been asking for several years. So thanks for doing that. It allows us to sell off surplus properties and bind that money or control those funds for future expansion needs. Thanks.
Kudos. Good job. All right, so that takes us down to the elected department head courthouse comment period.
Public comment.
We're going to do the elected and the department head first,
Oh,
then we'll go to public
okay.
comment. I've
Okay.
added that before public
Oh,
comment.
okay.
So if there's
Sorry.
any elected official or department head that would like to comment, that way we can engage with them.
Commissioners, on your legislative update, rest assured that this sheriff investigates all criminal complaints that comes into the office, and they're investigated and they're forwarded to the prosecutor's office. There's a big difference between failure to investigate and arresting an individual, and that's what the sheriffs across this state are opposed to. When they believe that there's a constitutional issue, they don't make arrests. And there's more to that story than meets the eye. Maybe you might want to have the Adams County Sheriff come on down to tell you what occurred to him when the Attorney General's office showed up, threatening to investigate him and charge him, and then headed on over to Olympia and dropped the bill that's currently being discussed. So there's more to it than meets the eye. But at the end of the day, this sheriff will ensure that whenever there's criminal complaints that come into my office, that they are thoroughly vetted and investigated. And this sheriff will decide if and when he's going to arrest somebody or forward information to the prosecutor's office for review. There's 2 ways for people to be charged, and one is by court summons, and the other is by a physical arrest.
Okay. We stand with you, Sheriff, for our constitutional rights.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I had one of the worst days professionally yesterday, which caused me to really examine if I want to work here or not. 2 HR directors have left, countless HR staff, public works, planning, attorneys, and others, all going through the same thing. Rather than going to work and having positive team experiences, which is normal for me, I feel like I've stepped into a scene of War of the Roses. I'm not 100% done here, but I plan to meet with some of you to see what steps we can take as a county to stop the exit of personnel and the carnage which disrupts this organization on a continual basis. Thank you.
Thank you. Any other elected or department heads? Next, we'll move down to public comment. Anybody for public comment? We have a caller on the line.
Go ahead, caller, you have 3 minutes.
I would like to retract my statement. I would like to sincerely apologize to Ms. Raymond.
At the moment of my first comments, I was only aware of the 2 emails between the state police and the prosecuting attorney. After reading deeply and deeper, I sincerely apologize and regret the offhanded nature my remarks could be received. I'm still here, hold on. Proof is in their lawyer's words, Pasco, Larry Kerr's words, during their pleading of Y191513 in the Franklin County District Court. While the Supreme Court has held multiple times that consistently the First Amendment protects verbal criticism, challenges profanity directed at police officers, unless their speech is likely to produce clear and present danger, yada, yada, yada. The city of Pasco regularly takes wrongful action against their people, hoping the poor people don't understand their rights. While protesting, citizens multiple times came up to me and informed me that officers from the Pasco Police Office punched them in the mouth for saying the words on my sign, such as, "Fuck the police."
Excuse me,
To the
sir.
officer,
We're not going to take
I
any
informed-
more of this
I
verbal
informed- I
abuse.
informed- Hold on, no, that's
No,
that's
you're
not
done.
abuse. Hold on.
You're done.
No, that was just
You cannot use vulgar language in this courthouse.
You and Brad Peck use vulgar language against each other while you bang
No,
the
we
gavel
did
at
not,
him.
sir.
I'm not using vulgar.
Cut him
it's
off.
Not vulgar. I
Please.
just read the Supreme Court case. Hold on, like literally.
We're not taking no vulgar language over the phone. Is there anybody else for public comment?
Thank you. Just make note that the county administrators have no control over what Pasco police do or don't do. Thank you, Sheriff, for your words. We appreciate your hard work in standing up for the Constitution. 400 years ago, I had 16 direct descendants that came over on the Mayflower. And they came here for freedom. They came here for truth. They came here to be able to worship God in their truth and in their religious freedom. So I respect the First Amendment, but there is an appropriate way when you are speaking in a courthouse or to those that represent the people. And vulgar language has no place. And I've never witnessed any of the commissioners use vulgar language, and I've been here quite a bit. I understand that is our HR person that got up to speak, and I just want her to know I understand there's some issues going on here. I get calls from several departments throughout this courthouse, several over the years, many times, and there is an issue, and I can definitely say it has nothing to do with Commissioner Mullen and Commissioner Didier. I know that there are people that have filed harassment complaints with HR in the past, and they were not filed. And this is greatly troubling and inappropriate. I believe that that there should be respect and there should be some rules. I think our commissioners can actually create rules where there are certain things that they can and can't do. I don't know, but something has to be done. But I just want to say to this wonderful lady here that, I was sued for filing a complaint with the PDC, an appropriate complaint. And it was on behest and behalf of Commissioner Peck. And I'm just a citizen at large. And I stood up. It wasn't that hard. Cost a little bit of money, but you know what? Half of the Mayflower, half of the passengers on the Mayflower died once they arrived to this country. We don't know what hard is. And standing up for truth and standing up for our country and our freedoms is worth it. It is worth it. And I will always take a stand for the people of this county, for our freedoms. And there are so many crazy laws. And I'm just like, where are the great attorneys that are fighting this? Because there are certain things that are unconstitutional. Just because it's a law doesn't mean you don't have the right to protest. I protested face masks because they were based not in science. Came here every week. And I witnessed Commissioner Peck getting inches from the sheriff's face, threatening that if he didn't do something about us, he would. That's how you protest. I didn't use vulgar language, but I stood up for the truth. Thank you.
Thank you. Is there anybody else for public comment? Anybody on the phone?
I don't have anybody, or she hasn't brought anybody through. Go ahead, caller, you have 3 minutes.
Is because of the retaliatory comments for threatening to be doxxed by an elected official. With full and relevant truth in Franklin County District Court Case Y19_1513. Municipal Case 900-22574 outside of Rule 33, and
This is
without
for
any
public
accommodations
comment.
or understanding, I was forced to plead guilty. Franklin County District Court Case Y191248, where Charlie Griggs admits to getting legal advice from the police, where the police knowingly make false statements.
I
they
don't
would
know
later use
what
against
this
me
is,
on
but
the
this is.
record.
should
Mr.
be-
Chairman, I would caution that some people have accommodations that are authorized under law. So the fact that it's not a human voice, I don't think gives you right to cut them off. Puts the county at liability if it's an accommodation.
3339 19166718. I would give you more numbers, except at some point the Pascal police stopped giving me report numbers, so I could not file public records requests. A crime I reported to the sheriff's office, and they failed to take a report of that crime, amongst others.
Okay. Is there anybody else for public comment?
Or they're off. They just.
Chairman, if I might comment on that last call. The caller didn't identify themselves, which certainly would have been productive and beneficial for the record. There are some individuals, for whatever reason, under the law, whether you agree with it or not, I don't mean you personally, whether we agree with it or not, are authorized certain accommodations. And I think that may be the case with this particular caller. That's why I offered that we might let it run rather than risk being guilty of running afoul of those accommodation laws. Thank you.
Can you give me that RCW for that law so I can look it up?
No, but I can certainly have the county administrator research it outside of this meeting.
Yes,
And if-
because I would like to know that law.
Sure,
so that-
and I would refer to HR as well. Again, I'm not taking a position on the law, but I am pointing out that it's my understanding that those laws do exist and we are bound by them. Thanks.
Well, we have been told about other laws that were not interpreted correctly, so I'm just wanting to make sure that we interpret this one correctly. So with that, we'll move down to the Commissioner Administrator updates. Mr. Davidson.
I had a pretty short week this week because I took Thursday and Friday off for the first couple of days I've had off since I've been here. I'm delighted to say it's not related to county business, but I had a delightful time putting on the 50th anniversary of the last Milwaukee Road train to go through the town of Carnation, and we had a standing room only attendance. It was a great event, a great historical society event, and came back and we did a budget meeting on the county budgets. We looked at, with the help of our prosecuting attorney, representative, and Tim with the auditor's office, and several other individuals were there. And we looked at the budget calendar for the coming year to make sure that we're in compliance with the law and maybe make a little bit more realistic budget dates. There was a couple hearings that we've added, or at least one hearing that we've added to this, to the calendar. And more importantly, we decided, and I think I hope the board is okay with this, we would like to, instead of Tim with the auditor's office, or chief financial officer, instead of him doing a presentation following the finance meeting on a quarterly basis, which we have very limited attendance to, instead he's proposing that he brings a budget review report, basically budget to actuals for the current expense fund, all departments, and start that next month, and do it every other month. So every other month, we would have a budget update to where we can actually be tracking budgets and make sure that we don't get into a situation where we have budget issues near the end of the year. So it'd be a substitution of what he was doing before, so it's no additional work on his part. He's just kind of shifting it from what's been kind of a limited crowd to coming right here so that everybody can kind of see it up on the board and do budget to actuals so that we can kind of monitor the budget and see how it's going throughout the year. I think it's a wonderful offer from Tim to do. It was kind of collectively with the group. I think also John, the assessor, was at that meeting also, now that I recall. And if it's okay with the board, we'd like to start that next month.
Yes, I agree. I think it'd be a great addition.
Mr. Chairman, I would offer that the county administrator might begin looking at Washington's Administrative Code 162-2640 and 80. 162-2640 and 80. Thank you.
That was it for my report.
Okay. Commissioner Peck?
The 1152 Committee of the Benton Franklin Health District met last week. That's the House Bill 1152, for which that's named. That is the bill that requires expansion of local boards of health to ensure that there's at least an equal number of non-elected as elected members to that board. I think we've all heard previous reports on this. I'll summarize to say that the new board looks like it'll be 4 elected members and 4 non-electeds. And the meeting on Tuesday, we finalized the bylaws and the process for which we would do the interviews and selection of the non-elected members. And you can expect that that process will be moving ahead probably in the next 30 days. Friday, we had our usual Wasatch legislative update on pending bills. And I think I already mentioned earlier that I'll be in Olympia starting tomorrow and Thursday, working on bills before the pending committee cutoff. And as I've said in the past, if there are specific bills that anybody wants a Wasatch position on, feel free to let me know. Thanks.
Commissioner Mullen?
So last week was the Wasatch weekly meeting. Also had the Washington Highway Users Federation meeting. Ben Franklin Transit, looking forward to implementing the smaller buses on some of the routes. Also sat through interviews yesterday along with the other commissioners, actually through WebEx. And then also I just want to mention that the Wilson House is selling tomorrow, and if anybody needs information on that, I would look to Booker Auctions. Find them online. But anyways, that house will be selling tomorrow. So that concludes my report. Thank you.
Thank you. Well, my report was Ben Franklin Transit also. And the smaller buses, also, they have had fentanyl usage on a couple of the buses. They are talking about their ridership on the increase. I asked the question with the population growth, how much of an increase is it really is happening in conjunction with our growth? And they were going to get back to me on that. Met with, yesterday we had our interviews with the candidates for the administration position. And then I've been meeting with Hospital District 1 and talking to Fire District 2. Mr. Davidson, do you know where we're at on those ARPA funds? I thought we were going to be able to relinquish some of those funds for a couple of the other, are we going to wait for that, or?
I think it's best that we wait for the input that we get from the meeting. And I know that Shirley with the Commissioner's Office is working on the entire list of the ARPA funds to bring to the board for their approval in fairly short order. I think it's going to be on the agenda for next week or the week after.
Because there's been a lot of talk about District 2 and their ambulance, not having an ambulance service. Am I correct in the fact that the districts pay for their ambulance service, or is this collected by the whole county and then distributed to the districts, or do the districts collect for the districts?
No, the districts collect for the EMTs.
That's why I thought. And so when we have a District 2 that doesn't have an ambulance service, District 1 and District 3 are providing that service at the cost of their districts. And so what we're trying to do is resolve a problem. District 2 has either got to come forward with their volunteers and an ambulance service, or they're going to have to compensate District 1 and District 3 for ambulance service. I think that's the only fair thing to do here. They can't rely on depleting the resources of 1 and 3 for their ambulance needs. They have to help the Districts 1 and 3 in their helping them. And I think that that's something that we're going to have to talk about and work out. And then I would like to ask the other commissioners if there's been any reconsideration on the February 27th meeting that is scheduled to be at HAPO with the new information that the clerk of the board sent out, where we were told last meeting that we were only going to be at $100. It looks to me like it's going to be a lot higher than that, especially if we have to set up for the audio. Now, we talked yesterday to Mr. Davidson and I about maybe starting the meeting here, going into executive session, then driving over to HAPO, doing this, and then coming back. Because if we've got to set up the audio, we're going to be over $2,000 at the HAPO Center. And I think that maybe we should reconsider and have it here.
Mr. Chairman, since you solicited comments from other commissioners,
I have.
there's no requirement to record these meetings. And given the nature of this being interviews, where the only thing that would be publicly accessible would be the announcement of the start of the meeting and the Pledge of Allegiance. Everything else is executive session.
Right.
And I'll say again, under Washington law, to my knowledge, recorded videos and audios of our meetings do not meet the requirement for meeting minutes under state statute. So we're not at risk of not having a lawful record. And since there's no direct public benefit, I can't imagine why we would spend any money to set up electronic recording devices for an in-person meeting of the 3 board members and individuals coming in for interviews for county administrator position. And lastly, I would note that it seems to me respectful to the extent possible that until the timing is appropriate and the board's made a decision, that we ought to try to protect to some degree the privacy of the individuals who are applying for this position. Some of them may prefer that their employers, some local, may not become aware of the fact that they're looking for other employment. So I think it's a courtesy not to advertise beyond what's required under the statute. It's not a requirement to record it, and we can do that at minimal cost. Lastly, I'd note that the email that you referenced didn't appear to take into account or understand that because we're liable for all of the losses that the HAPO Center incurs each year, or at least 50% of those.
Yes.
Any dollar that we put into the HAPO Center, at least half of that results in savings at the end of the year when we have to pay for the losses. So you can take any estimated costs and immediately cut them in half. So that, together with the other observations I've made, I think the HAPO Center plan is appropriate, and it allows interviewees to do so outside of this very public courthouse and remain some degree of privacy for them. That's my advice. Thanks.
Commissioner Mullen, do you have anything to weigh in on this? Did you see the email on the cost?
My question would be is, do we have to record it or do not? I mean, that's
We do not.
just
Well, again, I would prefer to read the RCW myself because we
We've
have
got
been
legal counsel in the room. Ask her.
I have the mic. We have been misguided before by assumptions, and I think it's best to have the legal in front of us so we can read it.
Mr. Chair, I would invite legal counsel to come up and address it. She's in the room.
Looks like she's researching it right now.
Pulling it up. We already looked at this yesterday. I just don't have it up and ready to go. It is RCW 42.30.220. Get that?
Yep.
Okay. Recording or online streaming by agency encouraged. Section 1, public agencies are encouraged to make an audio or video recording of, comma, or 2, provide an online streaming option for all regular meetings of its governing body, and to make recordings of these meetings available online for a minimum of 6 months.
Encourage, not required. Regular meetings, not special meetings.
Correct.
This is a special meeting.
Clerk of the board.
Okay, I just want clarification that if there's no recordings, nothing that my job needs to be done during this special meeting. Is that correct?
No, you need to still do the minutes, which says they opened at whatever time.
So the public has
I
no
know.
idea of what's going on and all of that stuff. So
It's an executive
I'm,
session, they wouldn't anyways.
well, so my question is, if it's a special meeting,
Right.
all of the other special meetings we have started, we've had the Pledge of Allegiance, and then we go into executive session. So that, are you telling me that does not need to be
That
recorded
is
now?
not a requirement.
Okay,
If it's easier for record keeping, that's a consideration for everyone to make, but it is absolutely not a requirement.
okay. Thank you very much for
Mr.
clarifying.
Davidson.
So that's why, and I did call Assistant Prosecutor about this yesterday. I thought a happy compromise, because we do have a history here of putting it online, and people would expect to see something like that.
Yes.
I thought a happy medium would be that the chair and I come here and open the meeting so that there is evidence of and the public would be, and we do the Pledge of Allegiance, and then we adjourn, and then we meet up with the other two commissioners, who would have joined us for the opening by phone, and then we go out to HAPO, and then we come back here. Then our record's complete, that it looks like all the other meetings, that we can actually adjourn and go do the executive, and you seem to concur with that yesterday, but I didn't give you the chance
We
to.
just need to make sure we close it then, so after you're done, Commissioner Didier would need to come back here
And
and
an-
say, we're
and-
done and no decisions have been
yes.
made, et cetera. you know.
And that's only because we do have a history of having it done
Yes.
this way, and someone down the road would look at it and see. Because I read that in the RCW too. I saw that it was very obvious that we're not required. You can go out there and find many counties that don't actually put out recordings of minutes. But this would provide an opportunity, so we just have to come and we'll do the first
We'll
interview
open the
about half
meeting,
hour.
open the meeting, and then recess into executive session, go to HAPO, and then come back, and then open the meeting back up and adjourn.
Because the recording equipment's here and it'd be easy to do, and then people would be able to find it forever that what had happened.
Right, and I think some of the confusion probably lies from the old COVID rules where we had to do certain things for open public meetings during the COVID emergency. So I think some of that is still kind of floating over into today's methods.
I'd only offer that as one solution, possibly, that we could.
So let me speak to that. I'm not aware of any authority that would allow the chair to open a meeting without a quorum present.
You'd be on the phone.
Yeah, if you guys are on the phone, then you've got a
Okay,
quorum.
so I didn't hear that briefed
You
as part
said
of
on
it.
the phone.
Sorry, yeah, there was a more thorough plan laid out yesterday.
Yeah, I
that-
just didn't hear
Yeah.
that, so that checks that box. And while I'm willing to work with this model, I guess my thought is that when this video appears, it'll be, meeting is open, and now we're going into executive session, and now executive session is closed and the meeting's over. I take the county administrator's view that, historically we've done it a certain way. I would say if there is significant cost, that cost probably outweighs the value to the public of that kind of a video. But certainly if that's the wishes of the majority of the board, I'm willing to participate in that.
And I have no knowledge of whether YouTube is free to upload it. I mean, what you're going to do is ultimately upload a sign that says in executive session for hours running on YouTube. I don't know if there's a cost or if that's a free upload or what that is. But
Yeah.
if there is no cost and people are willing to do this, then there's certainly no harm to doing it either.
Well, if the meeting is properly noticed, and I'm sure it will be, and minutes are made available for public consumption, I think it's clear that that meets the statutory obligations. And if there's a significant cost in having a YouTube that starts out with us opening the meeting and then hours of a sign that says executive session, then us closing, I'm not sure there's a lot of real public value in that. But again, I'll go with the majority, and we'll see how it works.
And the only two that'll be inconvenienced will be me, Mr. Davidson, and I, and we'll be over at HAPO shortly thereafter. And then we'll come back and close the meeting. So
we'll need, we will need, if you're going to do this, obviously with driving time and start time and whatnot, we're going to need to make sure that Karen's notice that goes out to the public starts that meeting earlier then. So if you're going to need to be at HAPO Center ready to roll by 9, you're going to want to start it probably 8:40 so you can start the thing. But make sure the notice says 8:40, not 9.
And then, Mr. Davidson, we talked about the cost of the HAPO Center, and there's been some changes there. Can you enlighten everyone of what the cost is going to be at the HAPO Center now?
Yeah, we just decreased the cost just slightly by not renting the executive room. Also, we'll just be doing the interviews in the same room that just in a corner of the same room that we've reserved for the entire day. Shirley's
So that
reserved
room will cost what?
$400, I believe.
Oh, okay.
So it's minimal cost.
And Mr. Davison, what's the cost of that executive conference room where we've historically done our candidate interviews?
I think it was $100.
I think it was $100.
Yeah.
Okay. $50 of which would come back to us in savings at the end of the year.
But the other room we've already rented.
No, I understand.
Yeah,
I understand.
so.
I just, the presentation that we make to candidates from out of state about Franklin County and the nonverbal message that we send of doing interviews over plastic tables with black pipe and drape as opposed to a conference room. It seems like $50 is not a bad investment, but again, I'll go with the majority of the board.
And this is where I don't understand somebody from out of state, who they're going to be seen by, and bringing them to this beautiful courthouse where we do all our business and sitting down on the same level. I would prefer to be at the courthouse, in all honesty, instead of traveling over to the HAPO Center. The HAPO Center does not represent Franklin County. The courthouse does.
So my initial views on this that I've expressed in the past were not over the interviews with the finalist candidates. It was over the meetings with electeds in an effort to assemble 3 tables in this relatively small room and provide some decent environment for electeds to have conversations with these candidates. That morphed into a suggestion from someone, I don't know who, that we put a table in this room, one up in the 3rd floor conference room, one out in the rotunda. There was some discussion about acoustics and about having people move all over the courthouse. So that was my concern, was over those meetings. If you wanted to do the in-person interviews in here, I don't think it's as accommodating and professional as doing them at a conference table where the people asking the questions and the candidates are on literally a level playing field, sitting at a conference center, free of distractions and the public coming and going, as opposed to having them sit here with the board on an elevated dais, visually talking down to them. For $50, I thought the executive conference room was an appropriate venue for all those reasons. But again, this is not a hill to die on, and I'm willing to work with the majority of the board preference.
Commissioner Mullen, you have anything to add?
So this section of interviews is only just for the individuals for the county administrator, and it's only the commissioners in the room? I guess I'm trying to understand why we need a bigger room. I don't know how many people to expect at this meeting.
The reference to the rooms was the plan to have 3 tables set up with elected officials from the county populating those tables, and then having the candidates who are coming in from out of town circulate throughout the courthouse from table to table on a schedule. Someone not in this board referred to it the other day as political speed dating, I think is how they put it. And it just didn't appear to me that we were putting forward our best foot visually. So again, just to summarize and clarify, we've already done our initial Zoom interviews with candidates. There's been a narrowing of that list. Meeting with those individuals in person, without distraction, off-site, across a professional conference table, level playing field, for $50 seems to be a pretty good investment. The alternative is to have them sit at this table and have us not figuratively, but literally look down on them as we ask our questions. This process, by the way, has been recommended by professional search firms that we've used in the past. We have used this precise room and conference table in the past to great effect, and that's where the premise for it comes from. And as for the meetings with the electeds, that would be in the room right across the hall that Mr. Davidson's already spoken to, that is $400. That room provides enough separation and good acoustics that you can have 3 separate tables with electeds at each, and the candidates don't have to orbit through the courthouse to find the next meeting room. They can simply get up and walk to a table 20 feet away. There are appropriate facilities there, and it would also be the same place we would use for a public meet and greet. So for all those reasons, I think the process that's been used in the past makes sense, but team player. I'll go with what the majority thinks, but
I might add that we have
investment.
conference room number 5 downstairs with a nice table, and it would be a great interview room, small. I think it'd be an excellent room. We could use it also for electeds, this room for electeds. I already stated we could put a table down below, and I'll be on a level playing field right here in the courthouse. I don't think any of these candidates are fearful of coming to our courthouse to be recognized. I think I'm proud of our courthouse. I would like to show it off.
assuming that some of our candidates are local, we perhaps ought to ask them if they desire any form of privacy.
The one requested to come here yesterday.
And whether they do or not, the de minimis $50 to do it.
You keep saying 50, Commissioner Peck, it's 100. So it's $100 to Franklin County. Pasco is not contributing any money. And if you're trying to equate that we're going to save money by paying ourselves, that's like asking the IRS to recognize me as a renter of my own house.
Well, let me explain it. At the end of the year, current expense pays for any losses at the HAPO Center. And by paying $100 into the HAPO Center to rent that room, we will effectively reduce the losses at the end of the year by $100. We share losses 50-50 with the city of Pasco. Therefore, our net effective cost is $50. So I think I'm finished debating over $50. I think I've made a reasonable case for the professionalism of the presentation. I pointed out that our professionals who we've hired to do this work in the past have recommended that process. If the board wishes not to do that, then so be it. Thanks.
I believe Commissioner Mullen had something to say, and then Mr. Davidson. Commissioner Mullen?
Yeah, I was just curious of like I said, how many people are going to be in these meetings, if we need, that a sizable room or not. I don't have a problem doing it at the courthouse. I don't have a problem, really going out to Hapo. But I don't want to have to spend the money to record the meetings out at Hapo. So I think that part, if we had to do that, I would not be in favor of it. But I guess is the conference room downstairs and with the county commissioner's room, I guess I'm against going out into the rotunda because I think that the voices would travel and people coming in and out. That's not a professional atmosphere just to do it there. So if we could find a third room in the courthouse, I don't know if it'd be upstairs. Historical courtroom is available, or what we could come up with, but I'm fine with doing it either way, honestly, as long as there's no extra cost out at Hapo.
So Commissioner Mullen, if I may respond to that, I just want to be sure everybody's aware that there is a plan to rent the room at the Hapo Center, not just for the electeds to meet during the day with the candidates, but there's also a plan to use that for a public reception at some point. Is that right, Mr. Davidson?
That's correct, and that's the point that I wanted to say earlier. As far as their anonymity and being here, the very same day we have a meeting with the public.
Right. Once that list has been narrowed, I don't know that all of them would be meeting with the public.
Oh, you'd make a decision before it went
Well,
to...
potentially. But when the list gets that small, I acknowledge that the public visibility is not a critical issue for me. It's more the comfort and the privacy and the quiet and the professionalism of meeting in a conference room for $50 when we're going to be across the hall that same day and then meeting with the public in that same room that evening. And we've already rented that room. So really I favor doing it all in one place and not shuttling the electeds. It's still not clear to me whether the electeds would be the ones that would have to traverse the courthouse to different conference rooms, or if they would sit at a table and all the electeds would orbit through the courthouse. But it sure would be nice to be able to do that in one room. So, thanks.
Okay, so the consensus is Commissioner Mullen, I'm for the courthouse, Commissioner Peck's for Hapo, and you are weighing which way?
So we've already rented a room at the Hapo Center, correct?
Yes.
But that room can't be used for earlier in the day?
Yes.
Okay.
We got it rented for all day.
And we don't have to go out there and record it?
No, Mr. Davidson and I are going to start the meeting here in the courthouse. Then we'll drive over. You two will be on the phone. We'll start the meeting, recess to executive session, drive out, do the interview process, and we will come back and open the meeting back up and adjourn.
Which I would say I thank the chair and the county administrator for being willing to do that. And just note that there's no requirement to do that. It's a preference so that we have something on the video that says that there was a meeting. But there's no requirement to do
And
that.
nothing has changed with the public and our meeting type. We open the meeting online and we'll close the meeting online. So everything stays the same. Nothing's different.
I'm fine with doing it at Hapo then.
Okay. It has been resolved. Mr. Davidson.
And unfortunately, we got one other issue to talk about this. The interpretation of public, when you say public, is that what I think it means, that we would invite, which I would be in favor of, we invite the public, or do we, because in previous ones with Keith, when he came here, it was only certain individuals that got elected, city leaders and stuff, and the public was not invited. So there's conflicting terms out there about what you gentlemen are referring to as public. I take public to mean public, and I'm totally fine with that, but I wanted to make sure that I was in agreement with the board.
Past practice has been to invite a rather large gathering of elected leaders from the Tri-Cities, people who are not elected but are in leadership positions. They've run the gamut from city managers to school district superintendents to major employers of industry in the Tri-Cities. We can do it either way. I'd be fine with either one. I do think that the ability for people to have any small group discussion, one-on-one, 2, 3-on-1, goes away when you have a completely open to the public, because the number of people will make that impractical in the time that's allowed. A compromise position might be to start it with an initial reception for community leaders, electeds, and then after a short period, open it up to all public.
Is that what you were wanting to hear, Mr. Davidson?
I think it's important that public that are that interested be able to attend. And in addition, this is just my own personal opinion, I think it's important for employees of the courthouse to be able to weigh in too.
Yes.
I would favor having the employees attend the early reception with community leaders.
So it sounds like,
yep.
I think I can. I think I got it. Public means public, which is good.
Okay, good.
Mr. Chairman, I'd appreciate a little more clarification than that. There's 2 proposals that have been floated here. Are you anticipating an initial reception with employees and community leaders followed by a full open public?
Right.
Okay, thank you.
All right. So with that, we'll move down to regular items of business. First one is step increase for 2023 salary threshold for an exempt employee. Resolution 2023-050.
Actually, I haven't been working on this closely. This is something Marco's been doing, but basically, there is an employee here who is getting a 2-step increase because the threshold for exempt employees changed. So it's just a law that changed it, and she has to be adjusted upward.
Okay. All righty. You might take some questions. Is there any questions?
I think the read ahead was clear, and the law is clear. And with that, I'd move for approval of Resolution 2023-050.
Second.
There's been a motion and a second for Resolution 2023-050. All in favor, say aye.
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 Aye. Thank you, Ms. Hughes. Next, we'll move down to approval of hire corrections deputy at Step 3, Resolution 2023-051.
Corrections Deputy Mintz comes to us from the Oregon State Department of Corrections with vast experience and training. It's been a common practice to bring individuals such as that in at a mid-level in order to get them to accept the jobs. So I think that's the request in front of you, is the approval to bring him in at a higher step.
Okay. Questions?
I think I have a pretty well-established history of supporting the fiscal needs of the Sheriff's Department, and I don't see this as any different. The ability to hire corrections people is already proven to be very difficult, and to find people who already have 3 years' experience in training is a blessing, and I think that it's appropriate that we support this. The only thing I would note is that, and this is not unique to this ASR, I see this in virtually all of them, where there is a request to bring somebody in a higher step, and the fiscal impact is only addressing this current year. And when you bring somebody in at a higher rate, $5,000, $6,000 a year, that fiscal impact carries on every year thereafter. Doesn't mean it's not appropriate, but to say that the impact is only for 2023 is really a misnomer. And again, I see this in almost every package, so I'm just using the opportunity to highlight that. But I do support it, and I'm glad to hear that we're making some progress on filling what I think is 8 vacancies in corrections.
Well, it got bigger yesterday. We had another one resign that's going to work for Prosser Police Department. What's currently going on in corrections right now is people are leaving because they're taking jobs in full-time police work, you know, Kennewick PD, Richland PD, and so on. And so what we have is we have essentially one person coming in that we're hiring with anywhere from 2 to 3 resigning and leaving right now. So I believe we're a little higher right now with that. And it's not something unique to Franklin County. In fact, we're in better shape than some counties. Some counties have had to shut down their correction systems because they don't have people to hire. It's not going to get easier in 2023. It's probably going to continue, especially when you have, you know, Pasco PD right now with about 12, 13 openings, Richland with about 10, and so on. For lack of better words, they rob from our jail systems for employees.
I will just add and close with this. Not everyone is aware that the corrections function actually belongs to the Board of Commissioners, and it's only with the consent of your sheriff that the sheriff can take that on. So I appreciate the fact that you do it, because I don't want to. Corrections is a tough business.
Yeah, it is. Thank you.
And with that, I'll entertain a motion.
I don't see a resolution number in the read-aheads.
2023-051.
I'll move to approve Resolution 2023-051.
Second.
There's been a motion and a second to approve Resolution 2023-051. With no further discussion, all in favor say aye.
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 Aye. Next, we'll move down to the administration office business. Mr. Davidson?
I apologize for the fact that this was not timely submitted in the read aheads, and that we are pushing this through last minute. The reason for that is that by doing this, which is basically administrative work related to the union acceptance of the union offer, by doing this at the same time as a non-barg saves the auditor's office accounting staff a lot of work. And so that's why we're advancing to do the this resolution to give the COLA 5% to the bargaining at the same time as a non-barg. So I apologize that this wasn't, that this was put on the agenda just yesterday, so.
Are you looking for a motion and
Yes,
approval? I don't have an I don't have a resolution for this one.
Mr. Chairman, before we proceed, perhaps, Mr. Davidson, did this information come forward in an email for today?
Yes.
Okay. I'm sure I received it if everyone else did. I'm just wanting to take a moment. This was yesterday that it came out.
Clerk, am I?
Yes, I take it as the last resolution was
B52.
051. This will be 052.
Oh, I'm bored. She's gonna.
Huh?
Yeah, she's holding up a poster to us, I guess, so it's 052.
Yeah, 052.
Yeah.
I need a flip chart here.
Sorry, it was just a place that this was on. We do not have a signed agreement with that bargaining unit yet. So we can't pass a COLA until we get that signed.
And I'm looking for any documentation to get more information on it. I don't care to vote on stuff I've not
No. We would need to discuss this in a closed session and give you more information, and then you guys can address this afterwards.
Okay, so with no signed agreement, I don't think we can. All right. So with that, we'll move down to public comment. Is there anybody on the phone or anybody for public comment? The last public comment.
Just that, a couple of things. I don't know if there's been changes in laws. I was shocked when I went to vote this time, as there was an insert, the voter's pamphlet was actually in the ballot. In doing some research, I learned this was done all over the state. It has nothing to do with our county auditor, but that over the Christmas vacation, the for the bond, the school bond, was written by the teachers' unions over Christmas vacation, and with no notification was given for an opposite view. I don't know the law. I'm just a voice of common sense. And I am just wondering if there's anything that our county can do that states you cannot put, it pretty much was an advertisement in with our ballot. Cannot put something in the ballot, any voter pamphlet or anything, unless an opposite view is also on that. I don't know. Like I said, I don't know the law. I'm not an attorney. I just was so offended by the fact that the teachers' unions and the game that they played and how they did that. So.
Anybody else?
George Dockstetter, Self Landing Road, Pasco. Two things. I would like to see us get these ARPA funds spent, and the sooner the better. The talk coming out of the news channels is the debt ceiling negotiations is going to include returning all unspent COVID funds back to the federal government. So if we've got the money in hand and we're allowed to spend it this year, I think we should go ahead and spend it unless there's something else comes up and we might lose it. And number two, I'm glad to see you're doing the interviews at TRAC, HAPO, whatever the hell you want to call it anymore. It changes. But as far as having a private meeting with selected public people, who next to decide who from the public should attend? There's nobody out there better than anybody else or rates a higher standard than anybody else in the citizens in this community. And if you're going to open it to the public, I think it should be open to everybody. Thank you.
Thank you.
My name is Lori Hales from North Franklin County. Thank you to the legend George Dockstetter for bringing up the ARPA funds. And I would like to say thank you to Dwayne for facilitating some really good conversations, and Clint for always taking my call. And also to you, Commissioner Commissioner Didier. And Commissioner Peck, I haven't reached out to you, but I will. I do appreciate you bringing up the ARPA funds again today. I know that there has been a pretty extensive list of ARPA requests, and as a Franklin County resident, that money could be doing a lot of good in this community rather than sitting in an account. Thank you.
I concur with the Michelle Andrews, city and county resident. I concur with the bond issue. It was not broken down. We couldn't tell what was being spent for what. We just got a flat fee. And it is not appropriate to ask the taxpayers, that are already paying upwards of $4,000 or $5,000 a year without an explicit reason why it's being spent. And then to come back to us for a levy I mean, Chihuahua is the biggest high school in the state. There's no question that we need another school, but at what cost? My husband was part of building Chihuahua when he worked for Power City Electric, which he just retired. Very expensive Taj Mahal, lots of space. That's beautiful, but not necessary. I'm very proud of it. I love going there for games. I love going to Pasco High School for games and supporting our kids. They're not our kids per se, but they're our kids. We enjoy it very, very much. So the school board has some explaining to do. And as far as I'm concerned, when you have as many administrators as you do teachers, you need to send some people back to the classroom and distribute some of those things that people do. Back in the day, the vice principal did their stuff and went back to the classroom. Now they're making up stuff to do. So I am extremely opposed to this bond, not because I don't want to support kids in school and get a new school, they need it, but because of what it sets up the taxpayers to do. And then you have the impact fees, which are immoral. I won't take up any more of my time, but I will say as far as civil service is concerned, it is 2/3 of the people that work for the county. The jail is the bulk of it. The Civil Service Commission makes very hard to make sure they do their part, to give it in running at the same goal of having qualified hired people to oversee the jail. When you're down 8, you're down a whole shift. That means overtime. If they can't keep, if they don't have enough people on their shift, they can't let the inmates out and do their thing and they get cranky and it creates a very bad atmosphere. I have ridden with both Franklin County and Benton County Sheriff's deputies, very highly beautiful people. We just interviewed for the sergeant's position. We had 11 people apply. We have fantastic deputies. We have a very good system. But civil service functions as an oversight by the civilians, and it is a different code and statute than it is for municipal. And we express very highly that we want to work very cooperatively to make sure that we have our jail covered. We have preference for lateral moves. We have preference for veterans. We try everything we do not to send people to the academy. We try to get qualified people. And this Civil Service Commissioner is dedicated to that.
Good morning and happy Valentine's Day. I usually don't write things down. I'm more shoot from the hip kind of a person, but after last week's meeting, I was pretty upset, so I figured I wanted to write down my thoughts and feelings. So a few weeks ago, the clerk of the board spoke to having a set of rules for the Board of Commissioners and how there needs to be kindness when the board members speak. Commissioner Didier seemed to agree and nodded his head in agreement. Last week, I made a public comment regarding proposed public works fee schedule, and as I was speaking, I didn't receive kindness, only open mocking. Commissioner Didier laughed at me the whole time as I was making the public comment. I assume it was an attempt to discredit my opinion and to get me to sit down and shut up. After the commissioner meeting was over, I approached Commissioner Didier about how his actions came across as dismissive and extremely sexist. He didn't want to hear me out or let me speak with him, so I am here trying to get my point across at the public comment period. As a constituent and as a tax-paying citizen of the Franklin County, I expect the members of the board to listen to public comments with neutrality and without mocking the speaker. I also expect the constituents to be respected, whether the board members agree or disagree with the topic and substance of a public comment. There's still also a huge discrepancy in the 3-minute public comment limit. The time given seems to directly correlate whether Chairman Didier likes the commenter or their comment. People Didier agrees with can go over the 3-minute mark without getting shut down and mocked. There needs to be equal representation given to all constituents. I expect more from the people who work in the county at the taxpayers' expense. And it was also very appalling to watch the treatment of Mr. Erdman last week. I feel like if you want to keep good quality employees in Franklin County, they need to be treated fairly and with dignity. And if Chairman Didier cannot be civil, it's time to change the chairmanship. Maybe it's time to give Commissioner Mullen or Commissioner Peck a chance to be the chairman. Thank you.
Just a couple things. Today is Election Day, so one of the reasons I want to come up publicly is we do advertise as much as we can. You have till 8 o'clock tonight. Get your ballots in. We have plenty of drop boxes to do so. Secondly, I really appreciate and support, especially given everything that's going on. Of course, it's the budget, but moving every other budget meeting to a public forum to discuss that, because it really is the lifeblood of how the county runs, and I think it's interesting. I mean, we've done it a lot, and a lot of it sometimes makes it up and some of it doesn't, but we'll be able to publicly track, what budgets are running well and our revenues. So I do completely support it, whether it's in an open meeting or whether we have occasional board workshops. I think it'll bring daylight to the budget process that is, especially with what I believe is going on financially without all the extra support that we've gotten federally. So anyway, thank you.
Thank you. Anybody else?
Okay. So just a point of order is that Commissioner Didier doesn't control the length. Mrs. Millam does. And so if people are going over, there's only so much that the chair can do. They can't, drag them out of here. But I can tell you when Commissioner Didier doesn't like what you're saying, he doesn't smile, he grimaces, and when he does, it's scary. But I've been laughed at by another commissioner when I've spoken and threatened with suits even from his attorneys. So I just wanted to say that it's hard when we're emotional. We have something, and I respect Kati Sant's right to get up here and speak, and she should be treated with respect. But sometimes our perspective isn't quite what we think it is, and part of that's just because we're sensitive to a situation. But definitely we should be, the public should be respected, and that the voters, I know, just reelected Commissioner Didier because he does stand up for the voters, and I appreciate that. So thank you.
I don't like tit for tat, but last week it was Commissioner Didier who said when it was time to go and when it was Mr. Bauman got 3 minutes and 25 seconds. I recorded it when I went home and looked at it. So you were not here last week, but it has been several times where people who are saying what you want them to say, they get more time. So that is why I would like there to be uniformity with all these things. And also open mocking happened last week. Everybody can go watch the video. So thank you for your time.
Thank you. So with that, is there anybody else for public comment?
Under RCW 42.30.050, interruptions procedure is available to the county and any other Open Meetings Act. You can have people taken out of the meeting. Thank you.
All right. With that, we have, I guess I should ask, is there anybody else for public comment? Seeing none, we have one closed session, 2 executive session, and I'd like to call for a 3rd executive session under the same RCW 42.30.110, parentheses 1, parentheses I, and I'd have the commissioners, the administrator, clerk of the board, the sheriff, and the HR director. Excuse me? No, it has nothing to do with the civil service. Has nothing to do with hiring.
Mr.
So
Chairman,
we'll start with the first closed session. Mr. Davidson, will you take us into that one?
Request a closed session under RCW 42.30.140, Section 4, contract negotiations. Because there's nothing following that, Jen, can I just go ahead and announce the other ones, and we'll just give a time frame for because there's no action being taken after it.
I'm sorry, is this a closed session or executive?
This is
Closed
a
session.
Then there's,
Okay, that answers the question. So closed session will take 10 minutes? Okay.
We have 1 closed session and 3 executive sessions. we have come out of closed session. And Mr. Davidson, would you take us into the first executive session?
Yes, request executive session pursuant to RCW 4230-110, Section 1, subsection I, litigation or potential litigation.
And who did, I guess we don't have to
No,
declare.
but how much time?
This is concerning, which one did you want to do, Jen? HAPO?
Yeah, we can do HAPO.
Okay, so HAPO, 10 minutes? It should be
You would present on that issue, so whatever you think you need.
50, let's do 10. Let's do 10 minutes and action may follow, right? We may need a motion. Okay.
All right, we will recess into executive session until 10:54.
Can we lump the next two together? Because they're the same topic. Yeah,
Are they
yeah.
the same people, though?
Oh, no, okay, so we'll go on and do the assessor right now.
Not the assessor, I need to.
We will take a short recess after we open the door.
Okay, we're
Go ahead, open the door.
on.
We have come out executive session, and we are going to take a short recess before our next executive session. 5 minute.
Go into, okay?
All right, we are back into regular session. We will, Mr. Davidson, would you please take us into executive session for 15 minutes?
Yes, Chairman, I request an executive session pursuant to RCW 42.30.110, Section 1, subsection I, litigation or potential litigation, for a time not to exceed 15 minutes.
Sheriff, right?
Yep. And you, Jen.
Yep.
Okay, we've come out of executive session, and Mr. Davidson, would you take us into the last executive session?
Yes, Chairman, again, ask for executive session pursuant to RCW 4230-110, Section 1, subsection I, litigation or potential litigation, not to exceed 10 minutes?
15, right, to come out?
Let's go 15. Yep.
15?
Okay.
We're out of executive session. We're going to extend for another 5 minutes. Same RCW. We've,
Okay.
we've come out of no mic.
Is it turned on?
Yep. Test, 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 test. We've come out of executive session. We're going to go back into executive session for 15 minutes, same RCW.
You know, Sheriff, do you mind
Hold
if
on,
I?
hold on,
Oh,
just a
sorry.
second.
We're not. We have,
I don't know why yours is.
still don't have a mic.
Mine isn't either.
Testing, 1, 2, 3.
There, try that.
Testing, 1, 2, 3. We have come out of executive session. We're back to regular session. Is there any other business for the good of the county? Seeing none, this meeting is adjourned.